Takumi has been summoned to another world and finds himself standing before the goddess Nolan. The first thing she does is sincerely apologize because this was all a huge mistake. She explains that when a summoning spell is activated, it randomly selects a bunch of losers from Earth to be summoned. But Takumi's life was actually going pretty well, so he was meant to be excluded from the summoning. However, an error occurred, causing him to be dragged here alone with all the others. This happened because the Holy Sidonia Empire decided to recklessly activate the summoning spell. Since Takumi was never meant to be summoned, Nolan brought him up here instead, while all the other summoned heroes went straight to Sidonia. Takumi asks her if she can just send him back to Earth since he was summoned by mistake. Unfortunately, she can't do that. She was so pissed off at Sidonia for using the forbidden summoning spell that she immediately patched it out of this world's magic laws, meaning no one can move between worlds anymore. That also means Takumi is stuck here permanently. To make matters worse, the process kind of killed him, so there's that too. Takumi starts freaking out upon realizing that he's a disembodied ghost, but Nolan tells him he doesn't have to worry because she has a plan. She can't send him back to Earth, but she can give him a new body and have him become a citizen of this world instead. As an apology, since this is partially her fault, she offers to grant him her blessing to make his life easier. Takumi doesn't really have much of a choice, so he agrees to be reborn into this world. Nolan is glad to hear that because it makes things a lot easier for her. She tells him to open his status screen to check out the new life he will have, and when Takumi does, he finds out that Nolan is planning to give him a 17-year-old body, even though he's 40. Nolan tells him not to bother with the minor details, and more importantly, he still needs to pick out his job. She explains that there are two main classes for jobs. If Takumi wants something more combat-focused, he can choose classes like swordsman, knight, or hunter. But if that doesn't appeal to him, he could always pick one of the production jobs instead. Takumi doesn't like the idea of having to fight, so he decides to go with the production job. Nolan then proceeds to implant the job in his soul, along with a bunch of other bonus blessings, and sends him on his way. Takumi crash lands in the middle of a forest, and after finally picking himself off the ground, he sees his reflection in the river and realizes that he really has become a different person and doesn't have the scars anymore. He decides to make the best of his new life and goes to look in the bag Nolan dropped off with him to see what's inside. In the bag, he finds some food rations and some money, so it looks like he doesn't have to worry about starving for now. He takes a look at his status screen, and it looks like Nolan really hooked him up with all the useful skills he could ever need. He even has elemental magic, so he decides to try that out first to see if he can really use it. He opens his hand and calls out water ball, and just like that, a water ball forms in his hand. The other elements work the same way, so Takumi is easily able to use them on his first try. Now that he has figured out how his magic works, he has to start thinking about his next move and decides to head for the nearest village. While walking, Takumi comes across a stick in the middle of the path, and it looks like a really nice stick. He uses his appraisal skill to scan it and finds out that this is Trent wood, obtained from the tree monster, and it is really useful for making things like magic staves and spears. So, Takumi decides to put his modeling skill to the test and uses it on the wood to create a spear. Since the wood works so well, Takumi decides to scan around to see if there are any other useful plants nearby, and he finds a ton of them. He spends the next hour picking them, but now he doesn't know what to do with all these. They definitely won't fit in his bag. He might have to leave them behind, but then Takumi remembers that he has an item box skill, so he uses it to store all the plants. Just then, he hears someone scream, and a few moments later he sees a little girl run out of the bushes. The little girl comes to him for help because there's a monster chasing after her, and when Takumi turns to see what kind of monster it is, he finds a massive horned rabbit. The rabbit charges at him and nearly impales Takumi, but at the last second, he freaks out and accidentally stabs the rabbit in the head, killing it instantly. He is shocked that a beginner like him was able to win against a monster like that, so he assumes it must be because of Nolan's blessing. But in reality, it had nothing to do with it. It was just dumb luck. As a result of his fight, Takumi earns the job title of warrior, but he's not happy about it since he was hoping to avoid fighting altogether. However, as he still has to check if the little girl is all right, Molly says she's fine and explains that she was out here picking herbs, but accidentally got too far from the village and ended up getting attacked. Upon hearing her mention a village, Takumi gets excited and asks her if it's all right for him to come to the village. Takumi realizes it would be a waste to leave it here, so he stuffs the rabbit in his item box. Immediately after doing so, he realizes that he just did that in front of Molly, even though he was planning to keep his item box skill a secret. Well, there's nothing he can do about it now, so he and Molly start walking over to the village. At the same time, the other people who were summoned have just arrived in the Empire of Sidonia, and they are incredibly confused about what's going on. None of them are hurt, but they have no idea where they are. All of a sudden, they hear someone call out to them as heroes. A man approaches and tells them that they are no longer in their original world, and that they have been summoned to use their powers as heroes to save this world. She introduces herself to them as the Empress of the Sidonia Empire, Elizabeth, and one look at her face makes the kids realize that she's shady as hell. Just then, a unique skill kicks in, and it seems Nolan granted her the blessing of revelation. If she follows her gut instinct, she will naturally arrive at the right answer. And right now, Akana's gut is telling her that Elizabeth is a backstabber, so she can't be trusted. Meanwhile, Takumi has arrived in the village, and Molly's parents come out to thank him for saving their daughter. Molly's dad introduces himself as Banga, and his wife over here is Martha. They think Takumi is a really responsible guy for having traveled so far on his own. On that note, Takumi asks them if it would be all right for him to stay in this village for a while since he has nowhere else to go. They tell him he is welcome to stay, but unfortunately they don't have an inn in the village, so there's nowhere for him to stay right now. However, they could always just build him a house. All the villagers gather around an empty plot of land and are about to begin work, but Takumi wants to make himself at least somewhat useful. He uses his earth magic to flatten the ground for the foundation. This is the first time he has used magic on such a wide scale, so he almost passes out from mana depletion. The villagers are all amazed that Takumi can use earth magic so easily, so Takumi asks if they think he just did something strange. They tell him not to worry about it since he has taken care of the foundation. The rest of them get to work assembling his house for him. By the next morning, Takumi's house has been completed. Thanks to his carpentry, blacksmithing, and sewing skills, he was able to make a good set of furniture for himself. But there's something else he's been meaning to try out. He got a bunch of ores from the village blacksmith Boron, so he wants to try using alchemy to extract the metal. He's got iron ore, silver ore, copper ore, and even some magic iron ore. If he starts off with the iron and tries to make an iron ingot from it, normally this would require a large furnace and hours of work. But with Takumi's alchemy, he can do it all at once. However, it drains a ton of his mana in the process. His first attempt at ore extraction is successful, and Takumi is really excited, so he wants to keep extracting as much as possible so he can make stuff with it later. A couple of hours go by, and Molly comes over to Takumi's house to bring him some dinner. But when she opens the door, she's shocked to find him passed out on the floor. Takumi had overdone it with the ore extraction and nearly died from mana depletion, but Martha and Banga gave him a recovery potion, so he's all right now and can keep practicing his alchemy. However, they made him promise not to overwork himself anymore. Over time, Takumi extracted a bunch of iron, copper, and even a bit of gold too, so he was able to make a ton of useful tools with them. Once he was done with his alchemy practice, he would spend time with Boron in the forge, learning how to make all kinds of weapons. The play turns out really well, and once Boron is done making the sheath, it will be complete. Tak's blacksmithing skill is now at level 40. He goes over to Banga and asks if he can borrow a couple of potions. Banga has no problem lending him some, but all the potions are basic, so he won't get much use out of them. Takumi tells him that that's fine since all he needs is a template for what a potion should look like. He's thinking of making some potions of his own with all those herbs he gathered in the forest. Banga is happy to support Takumi in any way he can, so he offers to buy some potions from him if he completes the first batch. Takumi thanks Banga, and after he gets the basic potion, he starts working on his own version. He makes it with some chopped leaves and water, and when he's done, he puts it in a glass jar so he can compare it to the one he got from Banga. Both of them are blue, but the one Takumi made is notably more blue than the one he got from Banga. Plus, it seems to have magic in it. However, Takumi isn't sure if this is a success or not. He's going to have to test the potion himself to make sure it isn't harmful. But he doesn't want to end up dying if it turns out to be poisonous. So he decides to build up some poison tolerance. And the best way for him to do that is to eat whatever it is until he's about to die, and then use healing magic to cure himself. He's been doing this for a couple of hours now, and he feels like absolute garbage. On the bright side, curing himself so much has granted him the purification skill, and that's definitely going to come in handy at some point. As Takumi is getting back to his feet, he hears a noise behind him and finds a massive boar staring him down. The boar clearly isn't friendly, so Takumi grabs his spear and gets ready to defend himself. As the boar charges at him, he tries to use the spear, but it shatters on contact, leaving the boar unharmed and Takumi without a weapon. He tries to use all the magic he has available to him, but none of them do any damage to the boar, so he's starting to panic. Just when he thinks things couldn't get any worse, he notices a poison spider behind him. and it looks like it's getting ready to attack. Takumi is completely cornered. However, instead of attacking him, the spider attacks the boar instead, causing it to miss Takumi. But the boar is still coming for him, so he has to think of something fast. So far, all of his physical attacks have failed, but there's still one thing he hasn't tried yet. As the boar charges at him again, he jumps into the air, and at the moment of contact, he uses his alchemy skill on the boar's head and breaks it down. Thanks to his quick thinking, he manages to survive, and now that he's safe, he decides to go check on the spider since it helped him out earlier. The spider is in really poor shape after it got hit by the boar, so he decides to heal it so it doesn't die. Afterward, he gets up so he can return to the village, but then he receives a notification telling him that he has successfully tamed the spider. He didn't realize it was even possible to tame a spider, but he's hesitant to take it with him since the spider is considered a dangerous monster. However, the spider hits him with those cutesy eyes, so he decides to accept it as his pet anyway. To make it official, he names her Maple. A little while later, Takumi returns to the village and shows everyone the giant boar he killed. They are all amazed that he could defeat something like that, but even more so that he managed to tame a poisonous spider, since no one has ever managed to do that before. That aside, Takumi suggests that they all share the boar since he can't finish it alone. So that night, a massive feast is held in his honor. While everyone else is having fun, Banga brings the valuable leftovers from the boar to Takumi and tells him he can sell them for money if he heads to the nearest city, Bolton. So, that will be Takumi's next destination. All the while, Goddess Nolan has been watching over him, and she's really happy with how well he is progressing. One of her fellow goddesses asks her what she's hoping to achieve by giving Takumi such special treatment. She gave him a special body, a special blessing, and on top of that, she can send him a whole year into the past before Sidonia actually activated the summoning spell that brought him here. But Nolan says she doesn't have a particular reason for it. She's just doing what she thinks is right. One morning, Takumi finds himself tied up in bed, and he already knows Maple was the one behind it. Maple apologizes, but Takumi has been so busy lately that she felt really lonely and just wanted to get his attention. Takumi realizes he has been so focused on his work that he barely spends any time with Maple, so he decides to take a break from work for the day and play with Maple, which makes her really happy. Just then, Martha walks in to bring Takumi some lunch. It looks like something weird is going on between Takumi and Maple, but Takumi assures her that it's not what she thinks. Martha takes his word for it, but she can't help but notice that the silk Maple produced looks really nice, so she plans to milk Maple dry of as much silk as she can make. Later that day, Martha has successfully created a spider silk shirt, and all the ladies in the village are in love with the texture of the fabric. Takumi hadn't realized spider silk was such a hot commodity. Still, the ladies explain that spider silk is a luxury item, so only nobles ever get to buy it. Martha asks Maple if she could make some more fabric for her, so Maple starts squirting it out, but this is going to take a while, so she isn't going to get to play with Takumi anymore. Takumi is a little disappointed since he was looking forward to spending time with Maple for once, but he still has things to do anyway, so he's not too bothered. It has been roughly a month since Takumi first came to this village, and he intends to head to the city, Su, to study his alchemy. However, he can't bring himself to say goodbye to all the villagers after spending so much time with them. Takumi goes to meet with Baron at the forge so he can continue his blacksmithing practice. Before long, they've made a chest plate that fits Takumi perfectly, as well as some steel toe boots. Baron tells him that the boots will be useful if he ever needs to kick anything, but Takumi doesn't intend to do any fighting since he just wants to be an alchemist. Just then, Bangma shows up, and he's glad to see that Takumi's armor is finally complete. However, he's going to miss him once he's gone. He knows Takumi can't stay here forever if he wants to expand his production business. So it's the logical move for him to head to the city where he can sell more of his goods and get a reliable supply of materials. A trader from Bolton is going to come to this village in a couple of days, so Bangma arranged for Takumi a ride with him on his way back to Bolton. They are sad to see him go, but they know this is for the best, so they tell Takumi to start getting his stuff ready. Takumi thanks them for all their help and starts heading back to his house so he can pack up, but along the way, he runs into Martha. While she's carrying a bucket of meat, he asks her what she's up to. Martha explains that she's on her way to throw away the innards of a horned rabbit that Bangma caught. Apparently, the innards are the most delicious part of the rabbit, but they need to be processed thoroughly to remove all diseases and parasites. This village doesn't have the equipment necessary to do that, so she has to throw the meat away to ensure no one gets sick. However, Takumi tells her that won't be necessary since he can just purify the meat. He bends down and uses purification magic. making the meat in the bucket safe to eat now. While Martha is indeed thankful, she is equally stunned that Takumi can use light magic. She tells him that he probably shouldn't reveal that he can use light magic when he leaves this village because there are very few people in this world who are capable of it. If people found out he could use it, it would draw a lot of unwanted attention. Takumi takes note of her warning and promises to be careful about revealing his power. In the meantime, while he's still in the village, he plans to use every bit of his power to make their lives better. He uses earth magic to build up a brick wall for the village's safety and convenience. He also builds them a water pump, as well as a couple of other amenities. By the time he is done, this place looks like a whole new village. So when the merchant arrives, he barely recognizes it. Bangma comes out to greet Peck, and after completing a trade deal, Takumi walks up so they can start going. Peck has already heard a lot about Takumi from Bangma, so he introduces himself, and everyone asks if Takumi has all his stuff ready. Takumi assures them he hasn't forgotten anything, but there is one thing he wants to give them. He pulls out one of his potions from his bag and gives it to Bangma. He already dropped off about 100 of these bottles at Bangma's house, so in the event of a disaster, he wants Bangma to use these to heal any injuries. Peck is left in shock after seeing the potion Takumi made, so he asks to take a closer look, and it is definitely a high-level potion. Although Takumi doesn't seem to realize it, the rest of the villagers soon show up to bid Takumi farewell. Peck says he will wait for them to finish their goodbyes before he leaves. Molly says goodbye to Maple, who's sleeping in Takumi's sack, and Martha hands him an outfit she and the other ladies made for him out of maple silk. Takumi is really grateful for their thoughtful gift and thanks everyone once more for being so kind to him, even though they haven't known him long. He then gets in the carriage, and all the villagers give him a huge send-off, telling him he will always be welcome in their village. As the carriage departs for Bolton, Peck mentions that the people of that village seem to really love him. Even the others in the carriage can tell that Takumi was practically family to them, and such a goodbye really tugs at the heartstrings. By the way, these guys are heading for Bolton as well. So the blonde guy introduces himself as Heath, the redhead is Rail, and the gloomy-looking guy over there is named Booger. They are all part of a C-rank party named Lion Fang, and they are currently acting as Peck's bodyguards. Although this region is pretty peaceful, there isn't actually much for them to do. Rail notices that Takumi is holding onto his bag really tightly, so they ask him if something precious is inside. Takumi answers, saying his pet killer spider is sleeping inside. The group can't believe Takumi managed to tame a killer spider, so Rail asks to see it, but he's being really creepy about it. Maple ends up headbutting him in the face. Takumi begins apologizing profusely for what Maple did, but the others tell him there's nothing to be sorry about since Rail deserved it. In fact, Heath wouldn't be surprised if Maple's encounter with Rail makes her fear all humans from now on. However, that doesn't seem to be the case since she seems to have taken a liking to Booga. While everyone starts fawning over Maple, Peck calls Takumi to the front because he wants to talk about the potion he saw Takumi holding earlier. He asks if there are any more of those in stock because, if so, he would love to buy some. Takumi doesn't really mind selling Peck the potions, but all of a sudden a horse stops, and it looks like there's trouble. A horde of goblins surrounds the carriage, preparing to attack, which is really bad news. However, the others seem pretty excited since this means they finally get to do something. They tell Takumi and Peck to sit back and let them do all the work as they step out onto the field. There are roughly 20 goblins in the field, so they are pretty confident they can handle this and start fighting. Rail shoots them down with his bow while Booger and Heath attack the rest with their mace and axe. Overall, it doesn't take long for them to wipe out all the goblins. Once they are done, they get to work dissecting the goblins to collect the magic stones. Shortly after, everyone gets back on the carriage, and their journey continues. After 3 days, they arrive in Bolton. This happens to be the first city Takumi is visiting in this new world. Upon arriving at the city, Takumi looks around in awe. He headed to the Adventurers Guild with Heath, Rail, and Booger, who had just completed their escort quest. Since it was a necessity to register in the guild before being allowed to stay in the city, Takumi decided to do that. He also wished to register Maple as his pet. When he approached the receptionist, Hans, he was informed that there was no alchemy group in the city. However, Hans explained that the alchemists end up registering with the Adventurers Guild to use the guild card as a means of identity. Hearing this, Takumi was open to the idea and was handed a low-ranked Adventurers Guild card. He immediately saw the chance to register Maple. When Hans saw Maple, he nearly peed his pants. Back at Peck's company, Peck sought to know how many potions Takumi had in stock. In reply, Takumi claimed he had 100 of each type. Having heard this, Peck offered 10 gold coins for the healing potion. and 50 silver coins for the mana potion. When Takumi heard these offers, he immediately calculated the value and figured that Elon Musk has got nothing on him after this deal. Even with this, Peck apologized for offering such a low price. This left Takumi suspicious about what kind of man Peck was and why he was so nice to him. While he imagined life as Wonder Woman's apprentice, Peck offered him a solution to the problem of accommodation, since he would be producing more potions from now on. At first, Takumi assumed that this would cost a lot and brushed off the idea, ignoring the broke-ass dummy that Peck was. Peck then called in his butler Thomas to take Takumi to his new home, along with a workshop for production. Getting to the house, Takumi was shocked to see that it was a mansion. He felt a sense of relief after being told that it costs just 1 gold and 50 silver coins a month. This sounded more suitable for the cheapskate in him. Still in doubt, he figured the house could be haunted, but Thomas assured him that it wasn't. Just then, Takumi accepted the offer. Later that day, the two headed back to Peck's company, and Thomas assured Takumi that he would be able to move into his new home the next day. On their way, Takumi sensed a bad smell coming from somewhere. He went on to reveal that he had been perceiving this foul stench since he came into the city. Just then, Thomas revealed that it was the smell of the sewage underneath the city. He further stated that only the nobles had the funding to purify their sewage, with every other person earning below the minimum wage. Hearing this, Takumi was moved with pity. The next day, he moved into his new home with Maple, and the two started off by repairing the damaged parts of the house. Since he was too broke to hire workers, Takumi made use of some materials he got from Peck's company and used his alchemy to make a toilet. This left him very exhausted, but after regaining his strength, he went to see his creation and figured that it was as perfect as he wanted. Just then, he heard a loud scream from Peck and rushed to see what was wrong. He found Peck wrapped in Maple's web, scolding his pet for being so rude, but surprisingly, Peck found the web to be very comforting. After that, Takumi apologized to Peck together with Maple, but Peck assured them that all was fine. A few moments later, Peck asked to use the restroom, and just as he got in, he came out screaming like a nagging wife. This time, he was shocked to find an unfamiliar restroom due to it being the first time he had used one. Takumi educated the ugly, illiterate Peck on what a toilet was. Takumi also claimed to have put a magical device in the toilet, which made Peck figure out that Takumi could use light magic. Although this was meant to be a secret, he had just been caught ignoring this. Peck asked if he could make 100 of the toilets, and although he found this number to be outrageous, he eventually admitted to the possibility, since it would be impossible to do this on his own. Peck suggested that Takumi get more workers to help him make things easier. He suggested that Takumi just get a contract slave, which would be able to keep his magic secret and do all the work he wants them to do. However, Peck tried to make Takumi know how dangerous it would be for him if it was found that he had an aptitude to light magic, meaning he would be taken by the church and forced to only make healing magic. Hearing this, Takumi was bothered about the possibility of making the toilets, since it could be traced back to him. However, Peck assured him that he would find a way to make sure it isn't traced back to him. While they talked, a shining light came from Takumi's guild card, informing him to take a simple quest within a month or risk being a member of the guild. Realizing the importance of getting more workers, Takumi took up Peck's offer of getting a slave. The two headed to Mullen Company to get a suitable slave. On getting there, Takumi wandered around and found himself lost at the sight of a beautiful elven girl. She tells him to get out of here. A little while later, Pet introduces Takumi to the owner of the slave trading company, Muen, and tells her that Takumi is interested in purchasing a slave from her. However, Takumi mentions that he was really reluctant about the idea of purchasing a slave. Mulan asks him if there is a specific reason for this. Takumi explains that, in the land where he comes from, selling and buying people was abolished long ago. Therefore, the idea of doing it here does not sit right with him. Mulan can understand Takumi's concerns, but she assures him that, in this nation at least, the rights and privileges of slaves are preserved to some extent. Basically, it works like this. The owner pledges to respect the slave's basic rights, providing food, clothing, and shelter, while the slave pledges to fulfill their duties, and duties are clearly laid out in the contract for the slave. However, aside from that, the contract also makes it impossible for either the master or the slave to cause lethal harm to one another. Takumi is quite pleased to learn this, since it means the slave contract is pretty much a regular job with some rules attached. Yulin goes on to explain that there are several different kinds of slave contracts. In the case where someone becomes a slave due to debt, they will be contracted until they earn enough money to pay back that debt. Other contracts are more permanent, and are usually taken by criminals or people who end up being captured in war as an alternative to death. However, the large majority of slave contracts are made by those who were illegally forced into it by bandits. Peck thinks that the most suitable one for Takumi would be a war slave since they can't be released without their master's permission, while Mulan could certainly make that happen. She asks why there is a need to make sure the slave can never leave Takumi. Peck starts talking about how talented Takumi is with production and how he doesn't want his secrets to be stolen. However, Mulan wants to hear the reason from Takumi himself. Takumi explains that he is a producer, so naturally, he would like to focus on his work as much as possible. However, that's a little hard to do since he also has to fulfill quests from the Adventurers Guild. He is currently living in a mansion, so if he will need someone to help manage it while he does his work and do some particular skills he possesses, he would like to make sure his slave can't tell anyone about him. Additionally, since he will be taking on quests from the Adventurers Guild and harvesting ingredients himself, he also needs his slaves to be a capable fighter so they don't get hurt when they accompany him. Mulan realizes that Takumi has no ill intentions, but there's no way she's allowing him to force a single slave to do both housework and combat. So she'll only work with him if he agrees to buy 2 separate slaves instead. That being said, she knows someone who would be perfect as Takumi's housekeeper. So she calls for Maria to come into the room. Maria was forced into slavery as a child and has been trained in reading, writing, math, and general housekeeping. So she would be a good fit for the job. Maria says she can handle the housework of a mansion all by herself, and Takumi is glad to hear it. However, Maria can tell that he's deep in thought, so she asks if something is wrong. Takumi tells her he's just a little confused since he doesn't understand why no one has bought her yet, considering how cute and capable she is. Maria gets all embarrassed by Takumi calling her cute, so he apologizes, stating that it might have been inappropriate to say. Maria calms down and tells Takumi that she can only do the housekeeping work outlined in the contract and nothing else. Takumi says he's fine with that, since he only wants her to do housekeeping work, but Maria wants to make it very clear that she won't do anything else. Takumi doesn't understand why she's talking about it so much, since Muan already explained how these contracts work. But then, Maria blurts out that she can't sleep with Takumi. Now, Takumi gets embarrassed as well, but he assures Maria that he really does only want her as a housekeeper, not as a meat keeper. With that said, Takumi asks Maria if she still wants to form a contract with him, and she says she'd be happy to work with him. Now that that's settled, Mulan says she'll begin working on the contract for Maria. However, as for the battle servant, she says she unfortunately doesn't have anyone who fits the description. Maria hears Mulan say this and calls BS because she knows Sophia is still there. Mulan doesn't take kindly to being called out, so she tells Maria to go back to her room and start packing her things. Once Maria is gone, Takumi asks Muan if what Maria said was true, and Muan admits that there's a battle slave in the building. However, she doesn't think Sophia would be a good fit for Takumi since she has a lot of problems. Mulan wants to end the discussion here, but Takumi is kind of curious about Sophia, so he asks to see her. Mulan reluctantly agrees to take Takumi to meet Sophia, and when they arrive at her room, Sophia is surprised to see that the visitor is the boy she met in the courtyard earlier. Mulan informs Takumi of Sophia's history, and explains that she was captured as a slave of war in the battle between the kingdom of Triara and the kingdom of Yuga, although this all happened more than 50 years ago. Takumi is shocked to find out that Sophia is more than 50 years old. Muan goes on to explain that the kingdom of Ugar was an elf nation, and elves naturally live long lives. Sophia hasn't been able to form a contract with anyone because she has a hideous scar on her ears, and her right hand and left leg both have impaired movement. This would already be a deal-breaker for anyone looking to buy a battle slave, but on top of that, she has also lost the use of the elemental magic that elves are most known for, so it's likely that she has a curse on her. Given all these facts, Muan doesn't think Sophia will be able to help Takumi on his quests, but Takumi wants to confirm it for himself, so he asks to have a minute alone with Sophia. Mulan decides to give him some time to talk to her, and once they are both alone, Takumi grabs Sophia's face and looks into her eyes. He isn't a fan of using appraisal on people without permission, but he needs to check what he's dealing with. He takes a look at Sophia's status screen, and to his surprise, he finds out that her stats are through the roof. Her injuries do limit her abilities, and she does have a curse on her. But if Takumi can fix that, then she will be the perfect companion to have in battle. Muan soon comes back into the room to ask Takumi if he has made a decision yet. So he tells her he wants to take Sophia. Sophia can't believe he wants her, and reminds him of all her flaws. But Takumi says he's going to fix it, so it won't be a problem. Muan thinks Takumi's confidence is pretty interesting, so she agrees to leave Sophia in his care. A few minutes later, Muan finalizes the terms of the contract, so the final step is to execute it. The three of them gather together, and Muan uses magic to bind them to the terms of the contract. So, once she's done, Maria and Sophia officially become Takumi's slaves. Maria thanks him for purchasing her and promises to work hard to live up to his expectations, and so does Sophia. After that, he heads home, but just as he opens the door, Maple pounces on him, making him fall to the ground. Sophia panics, thinking that she needs to take the monster off her master's head, but Takumi tells her to stop because Maple is actually his pet. The girls are confused, but they accept that Takumi is a weirdo. He then leads them inside and gives them their own rooms because he has too many free rooms anyway. He tells them that they can freely use the bath in the house as they please, and the girls hit it immediately after settling down. Once inside the bath, Maria says that she never thought that Muan would let Sophia go, because she has always been really protective of her, but Takumi must be special. However, Sophia is lost in thought about the contract she saw earlier. Most of the information about Takumi was left blank, and she wonders just who the hell he is. After that, they go to the dining room, where Takumi has prepared dinner for everyone. Maria complains and throws a tantrum, because cooking is supposed to be her job, and Takumi somehow consoles her. Sophia also has concerns about him allowing slaves to eat together with him, but Takumi tells her that he's chill like that. The next day, he receives a parcel from Peck and then goes shopping in the market. On the way, he notices a church, so he casually walks inside. He finds a statue of Nolan there and starts praying to her. He has heard that the Empire of Sidonia controls religion in this country as well, and he wonders why Nolan hates them so much when they worship her too. Suddenly, he hears Nolan's voice telling him that she hates them because she is not a part of their circle. Takumi opens his eyes to see himself floating over the clouds and panics, wondering if he is dead again. Nolan tells him that she has just called him up for a chat, and then she tells him about her relation with Sidonia and its policies. She says that originally, there was the Church of Creation that worshipped her, but then the Sidonia Empire formed the Church of Divine Light, which worshipped a god that didn't even exist. Sidonia used their power to get more followers and began pushing back the Church of Creation, but Nolan didn't want to interfere in the petty matters of humans. After this, she tells Takumi that, while the other blessings she granted him will last forever, she also gave him a little bit of plot armor, which is about to be used up soon. She tells him that he might find it harder to solve problems now, and the people he meets may want to harm him. Takumi finally realizes that all the helpful people he met till now were brought to him by Nolan's blessing, but now it is all up to him. With that, the prayer ends, and he finds himself back in the church. He returns home soon and instantly Maple tackles him, making him fall down. The girls come to help him pick his stuff up, and Takumi sees Sophia reaching for his special parcel. He immediately uses the item box to keep it away from her. Then he hurries to the workshop to do some experiments. Now Sophia is curious because the package was wrapped in magic paper. So she follows Takumi to the workshop. To her horror, Takumi dips a knife in a pot of poison and then slashes his hand with it before using holy magic to purify the poison, so that he can level up his holy magic to treat Sophia. He groans in pain the entire time and then suddenly mentions Maria's name, which provokes Sophia into confronting him. She barges into the room and tells him that she won't forgive him if he does anything to Maria. Then, suddenly, she collapses in Takumi's arms. He finds that she is extremely exhausted and also has a slight injury on her hand. He tries to heal her, but it is really hard and tiring because the curse resists healing magic. However, he succeeds in doing it, and his holy magic levels up. After that, he takes her to her room, and Maria informs him that whenever Sophia gets too excited or anxious, she collapses from exhaustion. Takumi tells her that it is the last time, and then casts a curse dispelling spell, as well as a high-level healing spell on Sophia, which heals her injuries and regrows her cut ear. When Sophia wakes up later, Maria shares the good news with her. Sophia is stunned to see her ear healed, and then she finds that even her magic is back. Suddenly, Maria hugs her, saying that she is perfectly healthy now. Sophia then goes to thank Takumi, who decides to clear up any misunderstanding between them. He tells her that he was poisoning himself, and then using healing magic to level it up, so that he could help her. He also clarifies just mentioning Maria's name, because she accidentally threw out some of his poisonous herbs in the garbage. Sophia asks why he would do such a dangerous thing, and Takumi reminds her that he is the president of the I Can Fix Her Club. Sophia is moved to tears because of this, and she kneels before Takumi, swearing her lifelong loyalty to him. The next day, Takumi goes to the library to find some books on alchemy. He is really unimpressed when he learns that there are only 4 books on the topic in the entire library. He wonders why more people are not showing interest in alchemy when it is so simple. Suddenly, He realizes that the books are written in an ancient language, and only he can understand it thanks to the blessings he received from the goddess. After that, he returns home and starts working on making toilet seats for the merchant. Payback. Soon, he finishes making 100 of them, and then decides to take a long break from mass-producing anything for a while. Maria asks him what he plans to do next, and he says that he wants to go on a little adventure to explore the world. He mentions that Sophia will be his bodyguard, and Maria should stay at home to look after it. However, Maria wants to come with him on the adventure as well. Takemi gets nervous upon hearing her request, because he is not sure about taking a non-fighter into unknown areas. Plus, he needs someone to watch over the house. Maria starts crying, saying that being left alone to look after the house without Takemi, Sophia, or even Maple is like being a toilet in the middle of a scorching desert. Takemi wonders why this stupid redhead has to think of such weird examples, but he still doesn't think that he should take her along. Maria comes close to him and gives him the emotional appeal with her puppy eyes. Takemi starts to feel his defenses crack, but before coming to a decision, he decides to check Maria's stats. He holds her face and looks into her status window, finding that she is a full-fledged battle maid, and her stats are even better than his. Takemi is surprised by that, and Maria again requests him to take her along. Sophia finally stands up and asks Takemi to let Maria come with them because she can teach her some fighting skills on the way. After hearing that, Takemi finally accepts Maria's request. He then leads the girls into his workshop so that he can create weapons and armor for them. He asks them what kind of weapons they want, and Sophia immediately starts listing different types of weapons for various situations. Maria says she is good with short swords and knives, but Sophia decides to teach her how to use a spear because knives don't have that much attacking power. While the girls train with spears, Takemi gets busy using his blacksmith skills and creates different weapons for them. He even carves designs on the weapons just for fun, and then casts enchantment spells on them so that they become more durable. He then looks at the knives he made for Maria and begins imagining them strapped to her juicy thighs, which gives this pervert a serious nosebleed. But he is not done yet. He realizes he needs the measurements of the girls to make armor for them. However, if he tries measuring them, he will probably die from a nosebleed. That's why he uses one of his skills to create wooden puppets that look just like Maria and Sophia. Thankfully, Maple arrives on the scene before he can start dry humping those puppets. Takemi asks for some spider silk from Maple, and then begins designing the armors with the passion of an incel. A few days later, he's finished with the armor that looks like regular clothing, and the girls are impressed by how well it fits them. Sophia asks Takemi how he knew about their measurements so exactly, and he shuts up Maple before she can reveal his dirty secret. He asks them to check their weapons first, and then gives them magic rings made from mithril that will help them cast spells quicker. After that, the three of them head to the Adventurers Guild, so that Maria and Sophia can register as adventurers. Once that is done, Takemi registers the three of them as a party. The receptionist then tells him that it has been almost a month and he must complete a mandatory quest to keep his adventurer license. Takemi tells her that he is there for the same thing. He goes to the quest board to pick an easy quest when suddenly a bunch of fat, ugly losers arrive. They start telling the girls to join their party because they can guide them better than the twink, Takemi. He can't let that slide, so he goes ahead to confront the human hippopotamus. Even though he is terrified internally, he can't let anyone talk to his girls like that. He tells the hippopotamus that judging by his size, his mother should be so heavy that even Superman couldn't lift her. This enrages the fatty, who punches Takemi, but he had already used a spell to turn his body into metal. The hippo ends up breaking his hand because of that, and just as his lackeys are about to attack Takemi, the guildmaster arrives and yells at them to stop. He looks at the hippopotamus's broken arm and asks Takemi if he did that. The hippopotamus tries to stand up for himself, but the guildmaster doesn't believe him. Luckily, the receptionist comes over and explains what happened to the bald man. The guildmaster Barak tells the gang of losers to get lost, and then calls Takemi's party into his office. He demands Takemi to reveal what he did to the hippo, and he hesitates initially. However, when the receptionist says that she saw faint traces of mana, Takemi realizes he can't keep it a secret. He explains that he just took out a piece of charcoal, turned it into a diamond, and then coated his body with it before getting hit. Barak now understands that Takemi is an alchemist. The receptionist then says that since he has such pretty girls on his team, a lot of incels will try to mess with him. She suggests promoting Takemi to D rank immediately so that he can be safe, and asks him to undertake a higher-level quest to earn that promotion. The guildmaster gives his permission, and both Sophia and Maria are in favor of it, so Takemi decides to take the quests. The first quest is to eliminate some goblins, and thanks to Maple's help, Takemi's party finds them quickly. Sophia rushes ahead and kills two of them while the other two dash toward Takemi and Maria. Maple ties them down with her silk threads, and then Takemi and Maria finish them off easily. After that, they hunt down some more goblins and kobolds to complete the mission. Takemi is concerned because they are seeing a lot of goblins. Sophia says that there must be a goblin general nearby with a huge horde of goblins serving him. Usually, it takes at least 5 D-rank parties to defeat one of them, but Sophia is confident that the 3 of them are strong enough to do it on their own. Takemi doesn't even want to take such a risk, but the girls crave violence. Suddenly, Maple tells him that she feels like she is going to evolve soon, so he immediately creates a pocket dimension using space-time magic to let her rest there. With that, the 3 of them head to the goblin stronghold, and Sophia predicts that there are around 300 goblins there. Takemi gets cold feet upon hearing this and asks Sophia if they really have to do this, but she doesn't even pay attention to him. She says that she has confirmed that there are no people held hostage there using wind magic, so they can blast the goblins with magic. They charge up their magic spells and then hit the clueless goblins, wiping out a huge number of them at once. Soon, the goblin general comes out to fight and charges straight toward Takemi. He blocks its attacks with his spear and then uses a fire spell to roast it medium rare instantly. After that, Takemi and the girls return to the guild completely exhausted. After fighting the goblins and seeing the number of magic stones and other resources they have collected, the receptionist experiences a mini heart attack. He tells Takemi to come to the guildmaster's office, but Takemi is completely exhausted by now. Still, he goes to Barak's office, who throws a tantrum because it takes multiple D-ranked teams to kill a goblin general, and Takemi's group did it alone. Suddenly, the pocket dimension reopens in front of his bald head and a hand pushes him back. Maple comes out of the pocket dimension after evolving into a half-spider, half-human hybrid and cheerfully introduces herself to her friends. The guildmaster doesn't even know what to say to them now and tells Takemi to just go home. A couple of days later, Maria comes to Takemi's workshop and embarrassedly asks for some scraps of cloth because she needs to make underwear for herself and Sophia. Takemi says that she won't be able to make that with scraps, and Maria shows him a sketch of her designs. Takemi finds them really basic, so he sketches some modern lingerie complete with a bow. Maria gets really excited upon seeing them and asks him to make a set for her. Just then, Maple pops out of the pocket dimension and tells Takemi that Peck is here. When Takemi goes to see him, he finds the merchant passed out after he saw Maple's evolved form. Later, Peck tells Takemi that Marquis Godwin, who rules over the city, wants to meet him regarding the toilets with the purification feature, and he has no choice but to go to the castle immediately. Though Takemi is initially concerned about meeting a noble, he finds that Godwin is a sincere man and a good administrator who is ready to bow his head to anyone who can help him make his city a better place. He thanks Takemi for the self-purifying toilets and for defeating the goblin general, but then warns him to be more careful in the future because if the Holy Sidonia Empire hears about him, they will surely come after him. By the time Takemi reaches home, he is mentally exhausted, but when Maple gives him some soft fabric and he remembers that he gets to make underwear for Maria and Sophia, he gets his energy back. He works 3 days and nights without rest to make a set for both of them and is completely exhausted at the end. He then asks the girls to try them on, but then wusses out, thinking that they will consider him a creep for saying this. He runs to his room and shuts the door, even though the girls would have been happy to give him a show.